State, Senator Dr. Rand Paul.
Thank you. Is anybody here from the Leave Me Alone Coalition? Your right to be left alone is one of the most precious rights. And recently, I stood for 10.5 hours on the Senate floor to remind all of America that we do have a right to be left alone. Some people say, if you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to fear. It's not about hiding things. It's not about whether you're doing anything right or wrong. There are many reasons why you want the government to leave you alone. You can be somebody who teaches your children at home. You can be somebody who's an evangelical Christian. You can be somebody who's Jewish. You can be somebody who doesn't believe in God. But you can be somebody who wants to be left alone for a variety of reasons. The Bill of Rights is about protecting the least among us. We came to this country to get away from tyranny. We came to get this country for religious freedom. People moved west to get even farther away from their government. The thing is that this is about freedom, and this is about understanding all of your rights. I say that the Bill of Rights isn't for the prom queen, or isn't especially for the prom queen. It's not especially for the high school quarterback, although it is for them also. It's for the least among us. The Bill of Rights is about protecting minority rights. You can be a minority because of the color of your skin or the shade of your ideology. The thing is we want the Bill of Rights to make sure the government doesn't become biased in any way. To exclude systemic bias from government is why we want to limit the power of government. If I were to be president, the first thing I would do is try to undo everything the president's been doing through executive order. The president plays word games. The president says he wants to balance your liberty and your security. And yet the program to collect all of your phone records was initiated by him without the permission of Congress. Even now, when the president has been rebuked, the president has been told that he can't collect your records. He was given a 6-month window. You know what he's doing right now? Suing to continue to collect your records, even though he said he would stop. So this is a president who says one thing and continues to do the opposite. Anybody here have a little bit of distrust for this president holding your phone records? This is a president who has abused religious liberty. This is a president who's gone after Tea Party groups. This is a president who's done many things to abuse power. He's gone after writers. He's gone after authors. But here's the thing. I'd say enough's enough. We need to say our phone records are none of their business. We need to have a sensible foreign policy. We need to decide what is in American interest and what do we need to do to protect ourselves. To me, it makes no sense to borrow money from China to send it to Pakistan. Absolutely no sense. I say not one penny more to countries that are burning our flag and chanting death to America. I've tried to stop them. In the Foreign Relations Committee, I introduced an amendment that would have said none of your money, not one penny of your money, should be sent to countries that persecute, incarcerate, or put to death Christians. And you say, well, certainly we don't do that. You would be surprised. There's about 25 countries that say that if you're a Muslim and you marry a Christian, you can get the death penalty. There's about 25 countries that say if you're a Muslim and become a Christian, you can get the death penalty. There's about 25 countries that say that if you are critical of Islam in any way, you can get the death penalty. Asia Bibi is a woman who was in Pakistan and was drawing water from a well, and as she did it, she was being stoned and beaten to death. They were chanting death, death to the Christian. As she was calling and crying out for help, the police finally came. and she thought she was being saved. She thought she was being rescued. They arrested her because the crowd said she had been critical of Islam. She now is on death row and has been on death row for 5 years. So I introduced an amendment. I said we should not give any more money to any country that has laws on the books that would incarcerate or put to death Christians, and the vote is overwhelmingly against me. 18-2 to continue sending your money, good after bad, to these countries, often of whom who laugh at us and hate us and burn our flag. 18-2. Every Democrat and almost every Republican voted to continue sending your aid. It's outrageous. Ask your neighbors, ask your friends, Republican, Democrat, or Independent, if they think we should borrow money from China to send it to people who hate us. We had a vote about a year ago on sending arms to so-called moderate rebels in Syria. There are 2 million Christians who live in Syria. If you ask them, who would they rather have in charge of their country, Assad or ISIS? They'll all tell you Assad. Doesn't make Assad a good guy. I wouldn't give him weapons or money either. But the Christians will all choose Assad over ISIS because you've seen what ISIS will do to Christians in the Middle East. So I said, why send arms into the Syrian civil war? The people you're sending arms to are allied with Al-Qaeda. They are allied with al-Nusra. And the ambassador, the former ambassador to Syria said, well, it is inevitable that the weapons we send into Syria will be fighting alongside Al-Qaeda and al-Nusra. And I said, why? Why in the world would we get involved in that civil war? And I predicted a year and a half ago, I said, it's inevitable. The inevitable irony is we'll be back in Syria fighting against our own weapons within a year, and sure enough, here we are. There's $1 billion worth of Humvees, American-made, U.S.-owned, once U.S.-owned Humvees that ISIS is riding around in. ISIS has been doing suicide bombings in our Humvees. Yeah. It's outrageous. They have money. They have more money than any terrorist organization ever on our planet. Where'd they get it? From us. They stole it from banks, but we put it in the banks. We need to think before we act. Here's the thing. We supported Maliki, the Prime Minister of Iraq, for 12 years. Even when he wasn't being popularly elected, we supported him. What did we get for it? He pushed all the Sunnis out of the government. And so in the Sunni cities, when ISIS came, they said, who do we hate worse? The Shiites or these radical Islamists who they didn't maybe fully realize how evil they were? The war is not going to be won by Americans. The war will ultimately have to be won, and we can help, and we need to do what we can to protect ourselves and our diplomatic missions over there. But the war will ultimately be fought and won when you have Arab boots on the ground, when they fight for their country, when they believe in it as much or more than we do. As David said, we're leading Hillary Clinton in 5 states won by President Obama. We lead Hillary Clinton. We lead Hillary Clinton in Iowa. Iowa's a purple state. Everybody thinks it's all about the Republican primary. No, it's about the general election. Who can beat Hillary Clinton in Iowa, a purple state that went twice for President Obama? Who can beat Hillary Clinton in Colorado that went twice for President Obama? Who can beat Hillary Clinton in Pennsylvania, which we haven't had a Republican win Pennsylvania since 1988? Ohio. You know all these states. These are the battleground states. Who can win? And often they say, oh, so-and-so's too principled and can't win. We combine both being for principles, being for ideas, being for new ideas, and winnability. We're the only Republican that leads Hillary Clinton in 5 states won by President Obama, and it's because of your help. It's because of this liberty movement that's spreading throughout the country, and I want to thank you for your help in this mission. How do we win the independents? How do we win in these purple states? It's the liberty issues. It's the issues of privacy. If you ask young people age 40 and under, did the government go too far in collecting all of your phone records all of the time, indiscriminately, without your name on a warrant, and just scooping up everybody's records? 83% of young people under 40 think the government went too far. I gave the same speech defending your right to privacy at Liberty University, Jerry Falwell's university, and at Berkeley, one of the most liberal universities in the country, and we were greeted with applause and standing ovations at both. Very few people can do it, but what I say is liberty is popular, and that's how we're going to win elections. We're going to win elections by being for the entire Bill of Rights. All 55 candidates running for president are for the Second Amendment to one degree or another. Probably most of them pretty decent on the Republican side. But there's not many that will defend the Fourth Amendment. There's not many that will defend your right to privacy, and that's what separates this campaign from the others. There's not many that will stand up for the Fifth Amendment, that says the government should never take your property without just compensation, without due process. The Supreme Court, you will be surprised, or maybe not surprised, is sometimes wrong. In the Kelo decision, a few years ago, they said they can take your property, your house, and give it to somebody who will pay more taxes than you. So your degree of property ownership is relative. So they can say that we're condemning for blight, even though you live in your house and like your house, and give your house to a big corporation. And that's what they did in the Kelo case. I think your property is yours. Property rights are something that is basic to our existence. Our rights are natural. They come to us from our Creator. And that no private property owner should ever have their property taken and given to another private property owner. There is an assault on your property. They have actually condemned churches and tried to give the church land to a business because the church is not paying taxes. There is an assault on religion. There is an assault on property. Just recently, President Obama issued a new regulation called the Waters of the USA. You know what the shorthand for it is? 97% of Iowa is now under the federal control of government and can be regulated. What? We start out with well-intentioned regulations, and I can be for some rules. The Clean Water Act says you can't discharge pollutants into a navigable stream. I'm for that. You shouldn't be allowed to dump benzene in the Mississippi River. But somehow along the way, we began to define dirt as a pollutant and your backyard as a river. Things got crazy. We put people in jail for putting dirt on their own land. It's completely out of control, but it's worse than that. The Congress doesn't even vote on these things. All of these regulations, $2 trillion worth of regulations, I never get to vote on them. They are promulgated, they're put forward by unelected bureaucrats. People say, what's the worst thing the president has done? And I say, it's a long list. How long do you have? The worst thing he has done, though, isn't Obamacare. It isn't the Dodd-Frank banking regulations. It's the collapse of the separation of powers. Madison said that we would pit ambition against ambition. The power of Congress would vie against the power of the presidency, and they would check and balance each other. They got some of these ideas from a philosopher by the name of Montesquieu. But Montesquieu warned, and he said if the executive branch begins to legislate, a form of tyranny will ensue. That's what's happening now. It's not just this president, though. It's happened under Republican presidents. It makes a difference who we nominate. We are being overburdened with regulations and taxes. We have the highest corporate income tax in the world. So what I've proposed is, I've looked at the tax code, it can't be fixed. We should scrap the whole thing and replace it with one rate. Republicans, Democrats, Independents, they all understand we're losing jobs overseas. We're losing businesses overseas, but why are they leaving? Because our taxes are too high, our regulations are too high. We can keep a lot of these companies. In fact, with a 14.5% rate, we'll be one of the lowest in the world, one of the freest in the world, and we can get companies to actually come back here. We could have the reverse. Instead of companies and jobs leaving, we could have people around the world, like they once did, wanting to come to the greatest, freest country. but we can't have it if we're letting it slip away with higher taxes and higher regulations. We can win. We can win again, but we need to be boldly for what we are for. Too often in Washington, people are just sort of giving up. The Republican leadership in the House and Senate, do you know what they're for? They're for revenue-neutral tax reform. What does that mean? That means half of you will pay more taxes, half of you will pay less, and the net effect on the economy is zero. Doesn't help anybody. I want to make government noticeably smaller, and I want to make you, the productive sector, noticeably richer. We can win again when we present our message with hope and optimism. We need to not be the party that's against certain people or against certain people who don't have jobs. We need to be the party that's going to provide everyone who wants to work with a job. Jobs are not, and work should not be seen as punishment, but as reward. So many of the things that exist around us where people get hooked on bad behaviors of one kind or another are because of idleness. We can create so many jobs that anybody who wants one will have one if we get it through our heads that government doesn't create jobs, you do. Let's leave the money here in Iowa. I want to be part of that message. I thank you for coming out, and I hope you'll help us get to all this.